we're going to use Nike as an example of outsourcing to show how they have a huge role in the global economy in terms of understanding where different types of jobs are found across the world. Now I'm going to ask you two questions. First, how many shoes does Nike produce or manufacture in the United States each year? The answer, 0. Second question, how much does the average Nike shoe cost? Right out of the box, brand new shoe. Somewhere on average between $150 and $200. And so your individual shoe that costs $150, how much does it cost to make? $2, $3, if that, based on material and labor costs. So where does Nike spend all that money? They spend all that money on advertising. They spend that money on new products, new designs, new fabrics, new technologies, lighter composite materials. And so testing out new things, new types of glue, new types of soles, new types of shoelaces. All of that is where much of Nike's money is spent. It's also spent on marketing. And so once again, we see Nike. They move their labor somewhere else so that they can make more money to spend on different things, on new shoes, new products, new lines, new things that people are going to want, but also in marketing efforts. And so here is Nike sponsored Michelle Wie, an up-and-coming Asian American golfer. And so what they're hoping was they're banking on the success as she would improve, as she would then become the next Tiger Woods. She was going to help spread the game of golf to Asia, in particular to women in Asia, but also with that, people are going to want to buy the Nike outfits. And so just like Tiger Woods, because of him being so successful, people wear these little red shirts, these little white Nike swooshes, because that's what Tiger wears on Sundays. Here, Michelle Wie, she wears a lot of pink products. And so here you're going to see Nike trying to sell other things besides shoes. So using outsourcing, the cost savings, to then use that money for marketing efforts to only increase the consumption of the particular brand. And that's why many would say that Nike, in a lot of respects, McDonald's and a lot of these other major retail companies are just effective marketers. They're very, very good at making you want their product, making you think that you have to have their product. And so once again, marketing is a huge thing that you don't see Vietnam them coming up with Nike's marketing strategies, but they most certainly do here in the United States, in particular out there in Beaverton, Oregon, in the headquarters of Nike. And so Nike, once again, this is just me showcasing how what they do with all the cost savings and why they do their outsourcing. Here's a quick snapshot of Nike's outsourcing efforts in Asia. And so in the 1970s, they opened up factories in Taiwan and South Korea. And so if you open up your shoebox from the 1970s of Nike shoes, you would see this little label say Made in Taiwan or Made in Korea. And what was happening was in these places, essentially cheap labor was available. However, over time, economic conditions in these countries improved. And so over time, workers said, you know what? We want higher wages. We have higher skill sets. I, went to college. I don't need to be stitching shoes if I have these high skill sets or high education levels. And so workers began organizing, started forming unions. And so what did Nike say? Okay, we'll just go somewhere else. And so then they moved to Southeast Asia, where we see a large presence today. Also in China as well. Why? Well, in a lot of these countries, you didn't have those workers organizing. You didn't have economic conditions rising to the point where you're going to have people demanding a higher wage. And so further, because there's fewer labor protection laws in these areas, Nike said, we can essentially move our factories here and save even more money, reduce our costs even more. Like I mentioned beforehand, 1992 was that key pinnacle year in which not one Nike shoe was manufactured in the United States, and it has been that way ever since. With that being said, let's understand more about these cost savings. So in 2009, the average Nike employee, so this has probably increased just a tad since then, but this is the most recent data that I have, as an Indonesian Nike worker made about $2.46 a day. That's not an hour, that's a day. So once again, think back how much an average Nike shoe costs. But as far as the workers that make those shoes, how much they get paid. Vietnamese workers make $1.60 a day. Chinese workers make $1.75 a day. And so this we can understand as far as the quest to find cheaper labor. And so by finding people who are willing to work for this cheap of a wage, you can then obviously save some money that can be spent somewhere else. So Nike, in light of this, but also in light of a couple instances of sweatshop or child labor allegations, caught a lot of flack from the international community for worker conditions. But Nike said, well, wait a minute, let's put this in perspective. And so since a lot of the criticism on sweatshop labor and child labor and having a 14-year-old Pakistani boy stitch a Nike soccer ball, which was on a major magazine cover, got a lot of bad publicity, Nike said, well, wait a minute. Let's look at the average, let's kind of put it in perspective as far as what does that money, what does the labor costs in that particular country, what does it relate to other jobs in those particular countries? And so the minimum monthly wage of a government or an employee, so just say a teacher, an average teacher in Vietnam, is $13, whereas the average Nike worker makes $54. And so essentially Nike workers make more than what police officers, teachers, other professionals, other people go to college, in Vietnam. And so it's all about let's put it in perspective. And so, yeah, to us, $1.50 a day, that sucks. Hell no, I'm not going to be paid and do that work. However, if we put it in perspective as far as what does that dollar value mean in Vietnam, inside that country, well, actually, it's not that bad. So it's all about perspective. Even further, Nike provides a lot of their workers free meals, dormitory housing, healthcare, education. And so when we think about this, Nike obviously reacted to a lot of these criticisms, but they also, they really shouldn't have been criticized because all they did was just find cheaper labor. And if we think about that labor is all related to how much people are willing to work for a particular wage in a particular country. In the case of Vietnam, they could make a lot of money and actually benefit themselves much greater than an average, more professional job.